If you make a deal with the devil, he's not going to show up as the devil.
Welcome to MsMojo, and today we're looking at the most appalling and reprehensible revelations unearthed in Netflix's documentary, Dirty Pop: The Boy Band Scam.
He was so busy seeing the shiny objects that he didn't see who he hurt.
Transcontinental Records. Inspired by the vast success of the popular boy band New Kids on the Block, Lou Pearlman looked to replicate some of that success and wealth for himself.
I learned that they sold $200 million in record sales and $800 million in touring and merchandising. And I said, I'm in the wrong business.
So he launched his company, Transcontinental Records. The first group who signed up with him was the Backstreet Boys. Although the US was more lukewarm to the group, they became huge in Germany, which later helped put them on the map across the globe too.
Lou's recipe was throw them in Germany, let them develop. It was a great science experiment for building pop groups.
While Transcontinental Records existed and launched successful acts, details about its financial health and inner workings remained opaque. This secrecy fueled suspicion about its legitimacy as a record label.
Lou definitely used his bands to catapult investment in all of his transcontinental companies.
Boy band sue. As the documentary reveals, Pearlman one day presented the band with their first paycheck, which immediately raised a red flag. If they were making millions, why was the check missing some zeros?
It took my bandmate, Brian, saying enough is enough for us to all truly open our eyes to what's really being done behind our backs.
Initially, they tried to give Pearlman the benefit of the doubt. After all, this was Big Papa. But when nothing changed, they hired legal representation.
I literally begged him physically in his office to make it right, and he didn't do it. You know, I gave him every opportunity.
JC went and got the lawyer.
Meanwhile, NSYNC, his other big band, realized they also needed to part ways with the label.
Hey, but does that make you ungrateful?
No.
Because Transcon was there when you guys were nobody.
Yeah, but Transcon has definitely been compensated.
As stated in the doc, Pearlman saw himself as the sixth member of the bands and compensated himself as such, if not more. Ultimately, both groups bought out their contracts, knowing it was the best move despite the huge financial cost.
The 10 of us and NSYNC, we did buy Lou out. A settlement was the easiest way to get out. It was a decent amount.
Creating a Pepsi band behind the Backstreet Boys' backs. The battle of the boy bands was huge in the 90s and 2000s, with fans fiercely divided between the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. The documentary reveals the true origin of this so-called feud.
NSYNC, it was a very hush-hush project. Nobody was supposed to talk about this band that was being put together while Backstreet Boys was in Germany.
While the Backstreet Boys were winning hearts in Germany, Pearlman decided to create a second band, becoming his own competition before someone else could, or creating the Pepsi to his Coke, as he phrased it.
If Backstreet turns out to be a dominant brand like Coke, someone is going to come along and create a Pepsi. We might as well beat them to it.
The formation and launch of NSYNC were kept super secretive, and code names were even used in official documents. Needless to say, the Backstreet Boys felt deeply betrayed when they discovered what Pearlman had been up to behind their backs.
We were definitely like the first child to a family that you thought you were gonna be the only child. We thought Lou Pearlman was our big papa, as we called him, and now he's papa of many kids.
Allegations of inappropriate conduct. Among all his questionable business endeavors, the documentary briefly touches on some of the more troubling relationships with those around him.
Wasn't a part of my life, wasn't a part of my experience. However, there was some suspect behavior.
In one instance, we meet Tammy Hilton, a nurse assigned to care for him after a medical emergency. Hilton recounts that after her work ended, Pearlman insisted on keeping her in his life.
And he goes, "We're gonna fly down to Fort Lauderdale to go to a friend of mine's birthday party." I was introduced as, "This is Tammy, my girlfriend." Completely blindsided me.
He introduced her as his girlfriend, although she claims there was nothing more than good companionship between them. Some people suspected him of sexual misconduct with the young people around him, and Hilton hints that perhaps he may have used her as a cover-up. The documentary only brushes across the subject, but it's not the first time these allegations have arisen.
If those things actually did happen, I feel bad for any victims and anyone who's taken advantage of.
The FBI raid. One day, Pearlman's colleague caught him coming out of an elevator.
He's like, hey, I gotta run. I just wanna say, I love you. I'm going out. I'm gonna be on vacation for a little while. Thank you for everything. Okay? Okay.
Within a few weeks of that encounter, the FBI had a warrant to raid the place and others linked to Pearlman.
I could see local news trucks, unmarked cars, people in the FBI jackets that you see on TV. Every drawer, every cabinet, everything is open.
It's believed that he had been on the lam for at least 6 weeks by this point. For many who knew him, this was the first time they had heard of these alleged crimes. Soon enough, news spread, and people who had invested their life savings in Pearlman's companies started asking for their money back. The FBI got their hands on all sorts of incriminating documents.
We had a warrant for the Church Street office. We seized a ton of documents.
I was able to go in with the FBI that day and bring out boxes of evidence.
They also had a warrant for his arrest, but as we know, he was long gone.
Lou left the country, and his story to everybody that was asking questions about it was he was going to get the money out of the locked boxes, that he was going to make this all right, and he'll be back, and he'll figure it out.
Frankie Vasquez Jr. From the start of the documentary, we learned that Pearlman's crooked dealings had devastating consequences, costing some people their lives.
I think Frankie knew a lot of stuff that he didn't want me to know. And I think he wanted Lou to return my money that I had invested.
One such person was Frankie Vasquez Jr., who worked closely with Pearlman and trusted him enough to get his mother to invest in Pearlman's company. Those who knew Vasquez noticed that he began to act differently.
And I remember looking at Frankie and being like, yo, what is the deal? And he's like, you don't get it. You're gonna get it.
Your buddy's done it now. Your buddy's done it. He was rattling on.
It seems he'd uncovered Pearlman's secrets, and the burden was too much to bear, leading him to take his own life. Pearlman's initial reaction seemed nonchalant, though he later claimed someone else may have been responsible.
And I told him, one minute you don't care, and the next minute he was murdered, and now you care? That doesn't make any sense.
The series hints at a big blowout between Vasquez and Pearlman after the truth came out, and that some initial investors had shady connections.
Unbeknownst to me, all these firms the mob was behind them. The mafia, they're all connected somehow.
The beginning of the end. Pearlman had his hands in many pies and was running one of the longest Ponzi schemes in US history. So where did it all unravel? Well, remember how he got sued by the boy bands earlier? Although those lawsuits were settled, he didn't settle his account with his lawyer, who then sued him.
He got Lou a favorable settlement, but he also ran up legal fees. Lou could have paid Cheney. He chose not to, which was a huge mistake.
This forced Pearlman to disclose his financial statements, and they revealed a fiscal disaster. What followed wasn't just a can of worms. It was Pandora's box unleashed.
Lou Pearlman had totally false bank statements, tax returns.
State documents also accuse Pearlman of using a mysterious accounting firm to hide the scheme from investors and Wall Street.
Soon the truth was out. Fraudulent savings plans, illegitimate checks, and countless forgeries. Investors learned about the investigation through media and word of mouth, and they quickly showed up demanding their shares back.
Investors started coming into all of the different entities looking to get money, to where there would be like scenes being made. Where's my money? How can I get my money?
People were stealing things from the studio and from the mansion, trying to get whatever they could.
On the run. As we mentioned earlier, Pearlman went on the run before the FBI could catch him. He took his business partner, Michael Johnson, along, but kept him in the dark about the true nature of their travels. With Pearlman's assets frozen, he relied on his partner to cover their expenses.
He was relying on me solely for his freedom. I didn't know that at the time. His assets had been frozen, which forced all of the travel to be on my credit card.
Eventually, Johnson got internet access and discovered the allegations against Pearlman. As he was uncovering the truth, Pearlman sat next to him, scheming yet another fraudulent plan.
And he had hand-drawn this bank seal for like a loan document, and he faxed it off from the business center to Bank of America. I think it was for $1 million. And he got the damn loan.
Realizing something was seriously wrong, he decided to leave. Later on, Johnson learned his so-called business partner had been using his name on records.
We've arrested Lou Pearlman in Bali, and he was under the name Incognito Johnson. I'm Michael Johnson. He registered as Incognito Johnson because we were on my credit card. Through that, the investigation was tied back to me.
Pearlman was eventually arrested in Bali after being recognized by vacationers. The Ponzi scheme. At the center of it all were Transcontinental Airlines, Transcon Records, and their parent company, essentially fictitious entities.
Ultimately, we discovered that none of that was true. He didn't have any planes. There were no operations at all other than this investment scam.
Pearlman lured banks and individuals into investing in these companies, promising high returns. Estimates vary, but the scheme defrauded investors of hundreds of millions, with some reports citing over $1 billion. He even set up a fake accounting firm named after 2 past criminals.
He did create this fake accounting firm called Cohen and Siegel, which was named after 2 gangsters, Mickey Cohen and Bugsy Siegel.
When the House of Cards finally fell, over $300 million was unaccounted for. For many victims, this meant losing their life savings.
These broken promises left the Caesars devastated.
We don't know where the next dollar is going to come from. We don't have any other money.
Given how long he perpetrated this fraud, the number of people affected is staggering. He ultimately pleaded guilty, but we imagine this offered little comfort to his victims.
You know, there were investors who came to the sentencing and talked about how he had ruined their lives.
There was no remorse, nothing. I don't understand people like that.
You don't expect to see a penny of this money back, do you?
No, not at all.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications.
The State Attorney General's investigation. A few years before all this blew up, Jackie Dowd, who was then Florida's Assistant State Attorney General, was looking into another one of Pearlman's ventures, a model scouting agency.
I very strongly felt I had a case.
According to Dowd, the state had 2,000 complaints from consumers who felt misled by Pearlman's model scouting company, Transcontinental Talent.
Just as she was about to move forward with the investigation, she was suddenly pushed out of her role, and the Attorney General dropped the case. Some speculated that personal factors might have influenced this decision.
You know, there were rumors that he had relationships with the Attorney General of the state of Florida at the time.
Had the investigation gone forward, the whole truth might have come out sooner, potentially preventing at least some of the ensuing trouble.
Federal lawsuit filed this week accused Christ of not doing his job then, and claims that investigation could have uncovered the Pearlman Savings Program in 2004.
While we'll never know for sure, it's possible that many could have been spared. Pearlman was sentenced to 25 years in prison, where he ultimately died. Did you watch the documentary? Tell us what you thought of it in the comments.
We'd all be much better off today if Lou didn't do any of this.
Check out this other recent clip from MsMojo and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.